Welcome back to the MMA Creators Podcast with myself, Will from Casuals Corner, and Leo from Leo Cooper's MMA. And today we've actually got a lot to get through because not only has the MMA world been going crazy, we had a good fight night at Sao Paulo, and next week we potentially see a British champion return home once again in Tom Aspinall at UFC 295.
It's not a potentially. It's a definitely. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm swaying more towards that, and I look at it and I think, is that bias? Is it just because objectively I'm looking at skill sets and think that he's pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world? We'll come on to that anyway.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
We'll come on to that because I know that we won't leave that topic if we get into it now.
Yeah, we're going to get around to it.
So,
I mean, I wanted to jump into, obviously what I just said before we started recording was,
go for it.
Will was down filming at Polaris 25 or 26?
26.
Down at Southampton, which is a jiu-jitsu grappling event they do, which is full of some really high-level fighters. Craig Jones was headlining. If you don't know, he's one of the highest level grapplers in the game right now. So I'm sure it was a treat to watch. How was that as an experience for you?
The whole experience? Yeah, it was interesting because the production is obviously night and day between where I was last at in regards to a organisation, which was obviously the UFC, and then this, which is still on Fight Pass, but it's of course a lot lower end of a show, if that makes sense. So we're walking in. So I went, for anyone that doesn't know, for context, I went and filmed for Meatball Molly. So I met with her, drove down there, got to the venue. There's no walk-in for the athletes. There's no backstage room, essentially, for the athletes to go into. So they have to walk through the front, bags checked, wristband sort of thing. No one knew who she was at the front either, which I found quite funny. They kept frisking her and whatnot. They were saying, "Oh, where's your ticket?" She's like, "I'm competing." There was about 3 of them. I had no idea, which was quite funny. But we get into the event, we get into the arena, we have a little back room just to warm up with some mats and whatnot. So it was pretty chill in there, really. They had some really good protein bars, which were actually really tasty, which I smashed a few of those.
That's what you remember, the protein bars.
Protein waters. I had a good few of those, and they were tasty as well. So it's always nice to pick up a good few bits of that. But just on the actual event itself, it was quite an interesting one for Molly anyway, because obviously in her last 2 fights in the UFC, she'd faced opponents which had really highlighted holes in her game. But she was also facing opponents which are specialists in grappling. You have a look at Erin Blanchfield, who's an absolute phenom. You have a look at Julia Stolarenko, even, who has 9 first-round arm-bar submission finishes, I believe. And she's also faced Gillian Robertson, who's the greatest submission artist in women's MMA ever. So, whilst, of course, there are certain holes, it's also nuanced by the fact that she's facing some really tough girls as well. So, I just thought mentally, from that perspective, to go and...
It's a battle.
Humble yourself almost to the extent of where you would sign up to your first ever grappling competition on UFC Fight Pass in front of the world, essentially, to go on there and to be very vulnerable and to go and put it on the line, go and say, look, I know there's a slight hole here, I've been working on my grappling, let's test it in competition. I just thought that was super impressive. I don't know if there would be a lot of athletes that would do that. And in regard to her own match, she obviously got an impressive first round armbar submission.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Which was, just, I think for her, it was just a bit of validation. I think for her, it was not...
Kind of poetry.
Yeah, it wasn't joy.
It was an armbar.
Necessarily. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't joy necessarily that it was this exciting finish. I think it was more relief that she was talking about. This sort of weight off the shoulders. A lot of people speaking, a lot of bad messages over the last sort of year
I've lost
or
you
so.
there for a minute, mate.
From that perspective, it was a really good trip.
Good?
Yeah?
Hang on, you're cutting out. No, I think you're good. Go. Yeah, carry on.
From that perspective, it was a very good trip. And then obviously as well, Craig Jones was there, who is definitely one of my favourite personalities in the sport, just of MMA, jiu-jitsu. Yeah, he really is. And I've heard him before on a podcast talk about how he gets warmed up and how he gets ready for events. And on the podcast, he said that he doesn't warm up whatsoever. He doesn't really do anything because he doesn't do that in the practice room. So he just goes out there and competes. I can confirm that to be true. I can very much confirm that to
I
be
like that though. I kind of like that.
100% true. What are you like at a competition warming up?
Oh, well, I mean, mate, I mean, just in general, I don't know about competing because obviously I haven't had the most amount of experience with that. But, I mean, from when I did compete, I did like just a bit of warm ups, but again, it was more just superficial. Like you need to keep your mind off things. That was more the reason I was doing it rather than to get the limbs moving and flowing. Do you know what I mean? It was more of just, I want to put my mind somewhere else right now. So physical activity in, even the lightest form is going to sort of provide for that. So I kind of get where he's coming from that. I did see his post-fight celebration. That was something. You won't catch anyone doing that, and it's quite refreshing in a way because there's a lot of guys I think in jiu-jitsu in particular, it's quite a welcoming community. But I feel like in the competing side of things, there's a lot of knobheads,
Mm.
just assholes. So
It's a cult.
maybe that comes from it is a bit. So I think maybe it does stem from that. But
Yeah, it's a
yeah, I
cult.
mean, it was good. So, and it was good to watch. And beating a guy like GM3, again, he's as bad as an esteemed grappler as you're gonna get. It was cool to watch. I'm not one for, as I said to you the other week, I'm not one for grappling events as much as I love jiu-jitsu. I'm particularly watching grappling, conventionally rather than in MMA. I never really wanted to find that too interesting. But I caught the Molly fight and the Craig one, obviously. I was sort of floating in and out. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool to watch.
Yeah, it was a nice little setup as well because the hall is quite intimate. I think it holds 750 people, but the way that the sort of stands are built, all funnel into the mats, you're essentially sitting on top of the mats. So there's a really good pop in there. There's a really good noise.
Yeah.
It's weird because you can hear the crowd obviously incredibly clearly. So there's a few people when Craig is actually competing. I'm not sure if it picks it up on the audio on the TV back home, but a lot of people are heckling funny things, are shouting out little one-liners. Of course they are, because that's the type of person that he is, and that's the sort of thing that he invites. But he done well. I was watching his face pretty much entirely throughout it, just to sort of see if he steered a little bit mentally. But he was dialed in, he was zoned in, and there's just levels to the game. Even though GM3 has the most subs in middleweight history, impressive stat in itself, there's just levels to the game. He just, as soon as he got that back, even though he was a little bit high, I think it was just a wrap after that. But yeah, weekend was a good one. And then I went home to watch, or went back to my friends to watch UFC Sao Paulo with
you watched it with some friends then?
Chicken
So was
gyros.
that? Oh, mate, I saw that. Don't even. I
say
saw that.
I actually watched it with my friends. I didn't. I watched it. I went back to my friends and watched it by myself.
Right. I was about to say, because convincing people to watch MMA with you is a battle.
Oh
It is a
no,
battle.
most of my
That's
friends
why I was interested.
would all happily have it on.
Oh, okay. Right.
Especially this particular friend as well. Mostly all of my friends will either be
Yeah.
a fan or be a light fan. If not be a boxing fan who would be happy to watch it. So, chicken gyros on order. That was delightful. And then, what did you think of the card? Just some
I
highlights.
actually thought it was really, really good, apart from the main event, which was so frustrating to watch. I was like, you just going in, we'll delve into that straight away, just because I feel like it's the talking point, right? It was just, when you pass into mount that easily, and you do it so many times over 25 minutes and still do nothing with it, it's one of the most frustrating things ever. Derek gave him no resistance in that pass to mount every time. It was basically instant. He didn't bother trying to sort of defend that with a knee shield, anything. And he was sort of content to sit there, which is one thing. I will have to give Derek praise for his submission defense. I thought it was very good. But I think the problems lie with Gelton's just lack of urgency. And I feel like maybe even he didn't realize that, because I mean, I'm sure you saw what he said in the post-fight press conference when he asked if he put on a show. It's like, well, no, you didn't, because you spent 25 minutes with basically no urgency, despite being in the most dominant position you can be in. And it does show how good he is on the mat, because those takedowns were there. They were money. He was getting them every time. Derek basically had no room to work with on the feet for the whole fight. But his stock's gone down, and realistically, I think if you put him against a guy like, yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of what
about down? You think
it definitely hasn't. I wouldn't say it's gone up. I'll put it that way.
Fair enough. I've not read too much of the dialogue online, to be perfectly honest about it.
I mean, that's just, to be honest. I mean, I have, but that's more my personal opinion. It's just how I see it. I don't see it as. I feel like if the golfing quality in grappling between you and your opponent is that high, and you still aren't able to get a finish, I mean, he was plus 1,200 on the odds to go to the distance that fight. That was mental.
I think
And
if I
he,
played
I mean,
devil's
that proves my point.
advocate, if I played
Devil's advocate.
devil's advocate
Devil's advocate.
a little bit, I would say that there were probably a portion of his mind which could see the fight was going later, and this is his first main event. This is his first 5-rounder.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
This is his first fight that's left the first or second round. So when he's gone full Donkey Kong in mount in the first round with a couple of these fellas that aren't on his level in a 3-rounder, then he's been a little bit safer to expend that energy. Did he want to get into mount, blow his load, lose the position, and then be tired on the feet? So there was probably a little bit of back and forth mentally with himself there. And then second to that as well, although those positions look super stalled out, and I guess they kind of was, when full mount is obviously a very dominant position, right? An extremely dominant position. However, it's very hard to stay in full mount on a full-sized man, especially in the bigger weight classes where they are more powerful and they can sort of horsepower their way up. And there is no one better at that than Derek Lewis, right? There is no better person than that. So once you factor in that he's a hard person to actually keep flat shoulders to the mat, I actually think, although it wasn't exciting, and of course we would have liked a finish or a submission, of course, I think the submissions that didn't really present themselves just because of Derek Lewis's jiu-jitsu defense was really good.
The one that really stuck out to me.
And of course with a neck like that,
when I'm training, getting that arm passed, I really struggle with, like, actually, if I'm defending rather, I often find myself, giving that up quite easily, and obviously not intentionally, that's just a personal flaw, but so it's quite, that defense is quite, normally they do a thing called answering the phone where you put your hand, you probably know that, you put your hand against you put your hand here and your elbow sort of flares out a little bit and it sort of stops the choke from really applying. But what he did, off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember exactly, visualize it. It was sort of, he wasn't letting Jailton get his head fully past the elbow and behind it and wrapping it over, which is quite a difficult thing to do. But obviously, as you said, Derek has the strength to sort of be able to sort of withstand that pressure. So, and it's not a nice position to be in for such a long period of time. Even when the submission's locked in, it's horrible and it wears you down. So it's even more impressive that he was able to keep doing that. I have to give him credit. Obviously, I know he lost the fight dominantly, but it's like submission defense like that against a guy like Jelton is very impressive. That was something I was definitely impressed by.
I think I was more possibly impressed by Derek Lewis than I was Jailton Almeida, if I'm perfectly honest.
In a way, yeah.
We've seen Jailton Almeida do that to a lot of guys, so it wasn't almost shocking. But to sort of have the composure, and I'm not sitting here saying it was a scintillating fight. It really wasn't. I just think as soon as you get in mount, as soon as you start letting your offense go, if you're Jailton Almeida, I think Derek Lewis just gets up. I really do, because you have to create openings then. That's what you give. That's your opportunity cost for full mount. If you're striking, you give more space and you give more opportunity to buck and get out. And I think if you've got anyone, and I mean that, anyone beneath you that's going to be able to do that, it's him more than anyone. So I just think there was a wearing. And I think as well, when you're watching on TV, you can't see the small battles. And I almost guarantee that he was feeling something in that full mount that just sort of said, yeah, we have to play positionally here over submission, just because of what he would have been feeling. But
I was interested by well, I'll just round off with this before we just move on. I was really interested by the commentators picked up on it as well. It's kind of like a number one like rule of thumb with jiu-jitsu especially when you're defending in mount, that you just don't stick your arms in the air and leave them out like that, because you're asking to get anything to basically armbar, whatever. And Derek was doing it, and it was almost like he didn't care. And I don't know, maybe I was missing something.
Maybe.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I mean, that's just some food for thought. I wasn't really sure why that was part of his plan. I was really intrigued by that. But there was something you mentioned earlier about Jelton, maybe the lack of urgency because he didn't want to gas out. That was how the co-main event played out. Was it? It was the co-main event, I believe. Dolby versus Bonfim. Second Bonfim fraud check of the year. I honestly, I saw the odds. Yeah, because Ismail got Benoit Saint Denis Check
Oh
check
my
check the
word,
little
I
one.
forgot about that
Yeah.
fight.
But I was actually, when I saw the odds for that fight, I saw how good Nicholas Dalby looked in his last fight, and I was like, it was plus 650 or something. I was like,
Is
that's
that what he
mental.
was?
I believe
That's
so. It might have been a little bit less, but I'm pretty
miseducation.
sure I remember seeing it was plus 650, which was wild.
Wish I would have
Even then,
known that.
anything that's ridiculous. And I didn't put money down, but I considered it because I was like, he looked really good in his last fight. I can't remember who it was against, but I remember he really impressed me. And I didn't know too much about Dalby until then. And then I saw those odds, like, and I know it was short notice. And Bonfim is a killer on the mat, and he proved that in the first round. He was threatening with all sorts, and that's the kind of grappler we love to watch, right?
Mm.
That's why I was impressed by Gabriel, but you could see the tide starting to turn the moment that second round started, and Gabriel just did not want to be in there. There was a moment when he looked up at the clock.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, he's done. That
He's
is
a bit
it.
broken.
And then Dolby just kept pushing forward. I honestly, there was a lovely little pocket exchange in that early in the second round, but a bit before the finish, which I was absolutely loving it. I really loved that fight. I thought it was, I don't know, not enough people talking about it really.
Mm.
I thought it was excellent to watch.
I think you're right. I think that was probably the best fight on the card. And
Honestly,
I think to a lot of
it's
people...
one of my favorites this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I loved it. I mean, for how short it was, I thought it was just great fun.
No, it was. It was. And any time that you see someone come back, snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, if you like, it's always more intriguing. And that's the thing with Nicholas Dalby is, if you said you wasn't too familiar with him, if you watch any of his fights, there's a very common theme. Very consistent, very well conditioned, and very experienced. Cage Warriors champion, been in the UFC for a long period of time, getting on a little bit, 38 years of age, but always comes in fantastic condition. And you have a look how he trains, how he recovers out in Denmark. He's the ultimate professional. So when I saw this matchup, I remember thinking, this is a tough one, because Nicholas Dalby has no name. So not only are you getting a very well-rounded, tough matchup, you're getting someone that doesn't bring a lot of eyeballs if you were to get the win over him. There'll be hardcores that know, oh, Nicholas Dalby's a good win when they look ECV. But the casual fan does not have a clue who he is. So it went to show it, really, when he lost. But yeah, Nicholas Dalby was very, very impressive. And he just lurks around that welterweight division, really. And he's
little
not...
shark.
Yeah, he's... You look at him and you
He's
don't
there.
think he's going to go to top 5 and really challenge. But
that's 4 in a row for him now.
if someone doesn't turn up and have their best night and they're super talented, they will get beaten. Yeah, they will get beaten because he's too consistent.
It's that veteran experience. That's what it was. Sure. Because I believe Gabriel had never been out of the first... No, that might not be... Actually, maybe it is. They said something. Point is, he had a very impressive stat, which, whatever it was, inferred that he hadn't really had...
I don't know what it was, but just know it was impressive. That's all you need to know.
It was something like that. I can check, but he's finished most of his opponents in very quick time, and you can see he wasn't used to that level of sort of resistance and sort of grit. That he hasn't had that yet. He's barely left the first round in pretty much all of his fights. It's
that's what happens when you
see him fade.
That's what happens when you climb the ladder in the UFC, though. Yeah. It's not the skill level necessarily is always the thing to improve. It's the conditioning. It's the grit.
Different ball game.
Yeah, of the people at the top. This is the thing that a lot is lost on a lot of fans when we watch it. Is we watch it usually from a skill level, which of course it is largely. But when you get to the top of those divisions, it's the toughness of these guys, which is of an elite level as well. They're not getting put out by your one shots. They're not getting put out by light submission attempts. They're sticking through it. They've seen it. They've been there before, and that's what the story of the fight was there. But what were the other?
Yeah, we could just brush through.
Yeah, what were the other highlights?
Got another win against the Busmagomedov. He's looking like a real force in the middleweight division. 15-1 now. That is 5. That's 5 in a row for him. I know what you're saying. It's a bit of a routine win. I kind of get what you're saying. That's kind of how I'd see it. It's a bit like a...
It was skilled.
The thing is, every fighter's going to have that,
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, you're not going to have your best fight every fight.
And he isn't... In his defense, he's not a knockout artist by any means. Most of his fights have gone to decision. But, he's... I don't know who you give him next, right? I mean, he's been knocking on that door of the rankings, and... I mean, is he ranked already now? I'm not sure. Maybe I'm.
If you're
wrong
winning
there,
5 straight in the UFC,
he's got to be.
You're in the middleweight
now,
rankings. Yeah. Middleweight, you're going in the rankings. Not in many other divisions. You cannot be ranked with a 5 fight win streak.
Jack Shaw, I believe,
which
was one of those at the time.
He
Yeah,
just
there
got
was
into the
was
rankings at the end.
no, yeah, he did. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, it took him a long time. That's what I say. Yeah, Elvis Brenner. Oh wow, yeah, that shot was that hook. It was reminded me of. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to ask you a fight that reminded you of, or reminded me of, and I want to know if you're on my wavelength there with that shot he landed with that hook. It is sort of exactly like in terms of placement another fight, and I'm wondering. I feel like you should know this if you when you saw the finish.
No, he put me on the spot. Not too sure.
Adesanya versus Costa. That left hook.
Nah,
That's
they're
glancing
not
on the temple.
they're the
They are in
glancing,
the
but they
place.
were
Yeah,
not the
yeah. That's what I was
same.
talking about. The placement, though. That's what I'm talking about. It was just such a
I
glance.
do
It
see what
wasn't a
you mean.
hard shot. It was
Yeah.
just grazed the temple, and just that equilibrium. But that's just what it reminded me of. Maybe I'm
Mate, reminded
exaggerating a
me
little
of
bit,
Dom
but
Cruz is what that reminded me of, because he went and Dom Cruz was on the commentary and said it was one of his favourite combinations, and you can see that because he steps through with the two, goes to southpaw, and then
that was a
throws the
great shot.
three over the top, and it was perfectly executed. And you have a look at Elvis Brenner now. He had
Yeah,
that
terrifying,
knockout
man.
last weekend, this weekend, and then he beat Guram Kutateladze by
Yeah,
TKO, which that's as high a level
that's a
win as you
crazy
can
performance.
get.
Yeah,
If we're talking about caliber wins, Guram Kutateladze is one of the highest caliber wins you can get at lightweight. Skill for skill, he's better than a lot of the guys at the top. A
yeah.
lot of the
But there's
guys at the
something about
top.
those finishes as well. As brutal as it is, those sort of ragdolls where the opponent just face down, just like a pencil, just straight to the mat. There's something about that which maybe it's a bit psychopathic, but I kind of love.
Slightly.
Yeah,
Slightly.
there's something in it. Yeah, I mean, it was a really good card again. Just a couple more. Dos Santos versus Fakhretdinov. I thought that was a great fight. Obviously, that went to a draw. That was a back and forth.
Fakhretdinov's human, isn't he? We saw that.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I
We
mean, it was a
saw
good
that.
fight. I mean, it's a shame about Bukaskus getting caught with that left hook. Because I'm a fan of his, but they sort of both went in there. I feel like that shot could have gone either way. It's just Petrino landed first. That was a brutal shot. Good stoppage as well. But yeah, I mean, I think we should just jump straight into 295 because I feel like that's the hot
Let's
topic
do it.
before we get into any of our creator stuff, which we can get into after. But 295 is. I'm trying to convince my dad to watch the co-main event with me because I'm like, you got to watch this. This is history for the UK. I'm trying to educate him, but he's not coming around to me just yet. But we can run through some of the fights. I mean, the one that obviously sticks out to me personally, Diego Lopez is returning against Pat Sabatini. We've had a couple of discussions about that. You know how I feel. I'm very high on Diego Lopez. I'm sure you are as well. Because wow, I mean, he is Diego Lopez. That first performance against was it Evloev he fought? Moscow Evloev on short notice.
Yes.
And he didn't win, but he looked very impressive. And Evloev was a guy who hadn't really been threatened in that division at all
Not convinced by
until
Evloev.
Lopez stepped in. Yeah, neither. Not anymore. I'm not. And Lopez looked very good. And then he came out and got that beautiful triangle. I can't remember who it was against. Forgive me, but it was very first round,
aggressive,
acrobatic, aggressive. Yeah,
almost
that's
a
the kind
flying
of grappling. The
triangle.
same thing that Bonfim brought in that fight last night. Just that aggressive grappling. You're hunting. That's what makes it grappling so exciting to watch.
That's what makes
And
it
Diego Lopez definitely
dangerous
brings
as
it.
well.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes it
Exactly. And I feel like
dangerous.
fighters are so obsessed on not giving up any room for error, making a mistake, or leaving an opening when they go for submission stuff. But I feel like sometimes that is the way to go, and a lot of fighters don't do that. And the passiveness is what loses them rounds on the scorecards. Lopez is not that kind of guy, and I'd like to see more of him on the feet because I think he's shown some shades of some pretty talented stand up for the little there's been. But yeah, the odds. I said to you, I put money down on him because the odds. He was an underdog, and I said this the other way, which blows my mind. Because Sabatini's good. No, I'm not. No disrespect, but Diego Lopez is. I'm very high on him.
Sabatini's good.
He is.
He's good.
But I think Lopez. I don't know. I mean, it's the hair, man. I don't know.
True.
As long as he doesn't.
If you have that
the hair, it
hair
gives him
and
powers.
you get a flying triangle essentially, and you have an all-out war on your day, you just
mate.
It's
I'm
hard
very high
not
on
to
him.
see the man without emotion because he's in a very good spot. Because after that debut, he had a lot of fans. He had a lot of draw online, and he still does. And it is the hair and it is the performances. And I think where he goes a little bit different in his game is what I just touched on earlier, because he's so fully committed to his attacks, because he's so all out with his jiu-jitsu offense. the opponent has to respect it. They have to respect it, and they have to mind their P's and Q's. So when it's on the mat, he's almost given a little bit more free. It's almost like you're given more freedom if you're aggressive because your opponent has to respect it. He doesn't necessarily sit there trying to set things up for a very long time. He jumps on things a little bit similar to the style of Oliveira. He's a bit more opportunistic, sees what he can get, and then jumps and latches onto the attack. So you would naturally think this has to go to the floor just because both are grapplers. But then that's usually when we see a stand-up kickboxing fight, right? So it's just interesting to see how this goes because not a lot of guys will go out there with a game plan of trying to grapple with Pat Sabatini, but Diego Lopez will be confident to do that with anybody. So I would like to see some exchanges on the feet, and I do think that underdog money for Diego Lopez is fair.
It's too good to ignore. The odds I will actually just tell you, the odds have actually changed. They're about evens now.
Okay, that makes more sense since everyone hammered on that.
That is a tell that maybe they got that one wrong. So we'll see how that goes. But my personal pick for not just fight of people's main event, but probably fight of the year caliber. If it goes that long, I don't I could see an easy knockout because Matt Favola versus Benoit Saint-Denis is absolute barn burner. And honestly, the more I look at it, the more I like Matt Favola in that fight. So I love Saint-Denis, but it's just got war written all over it. That is, if I had a gun to my head and I had to pick two men to appease, I don't know, anybody to watch, getting someone into the fight game, that would be it because they're just sluggers and they both have the will to win and just the knockout powers there. It's a great fight. I mean, there's little to say really because there's not much to say because it's a banger. It's a banger. I'll let you speak on it.
When I first saw this matchup was announced, it was amidst the craziness of all the big fights that were being announced for the back end of the year. This one stuck out like a sore thumb in regards to the matchup because Matt Favola and Benoit Saint-Denis is genuinely stylistically one of the funnest matchups that you could possibly make. And I wholeheartedly mean that. As soon as I saw this, I was super excited because obviously in Matt Favola, you have someone who's constantly improving his grappling and comes from a semi-back wrestling background, so he has good ground game. Obviously training at Serra-Longo, training now at Extreme Couture a little bit as well with Eric Nixick, who's renownedly one of the best combat coaches in the world, bar none. So I'm just excited to see where he's at really in his career because it seems like he's ready for a big push. He had a fantastic win over the Giga Chad.
Drew Dober.
Incredible win. And now, if he can just get one more big one, now we're talking about Matt Favola in a whole different light. He has good backing, good fans. And then you got Benoit Saint-Denis.
I don't know if Saint-Denis has the stock though to propel him that far though.
Says
to us he does.
The UK
ability-wise, I think he does.
American market possibly. To the French market. To the French market, which is an increasingly growing market in MMA.
Of course, yeah.
He's probably massive, I would guess. He's very stoic. He's a good-looking lad. But comes from the Marines. Muay Thai striking, crazy jiu-jitsu. I think we see this on the floor at least once. I wouldn't be surprised if Benoit got tagged by a big right hand early and then tried to start maybe going for the single and whatnot. Maybe. I think that's probably his easier path to victory. But I think he'll be cleaner on the feet. I don't think he'll...
I think Favola will beat him on the feet. I do. I think Favola will catch him.
I don't know.
That's how I see it go. Every time I visualize it, I think Favola's a bit of a dog in that fight, but I like it.
Yeah,
I like
that
right hand. I do. I like Matt Favola's right hand against the cage. I can see that back if he backs him up there. I feel like he can land flush. Saint-Denis got a chin on him though, so I don't know.
I think we'll see.
I rewatched that fight with Dos Santos. Sorry, just quickly. I rewatched that fight with Dos Santos for my referee stoppage video. And he's just the amount of shots he takes without going down. It's kind of unbelievable. So there's no question that Saint-Denis got a chin on him, but Matt Favola's power is different.
And that was upper weight class.
Yeah, true. So so many factors, isn't it? So we don't really know how it's going to go at the end of the day.
I think he's going to be a little bit, at least early on, cleaner with the striking, just a touch, not necessarily the boxing, but the kickboxing. And I think he's going to try and employ a similar method that he done in his last fight, where he's facing someone with a lot of power. and he's facing someone in an opposite stance. So I can see him going southpaw and just blasting the arms of Matt Frivola, trying to get that right hand a little bit heavy, maybe beat it up, break it up early, and then go into the later fight and look to grapple and look to wear on him. Really good matchup, one of the best on the card for sure. Not sure how that one's going.
I have
Flip
to
of the
say,
coin.
just this main card is in general is stacked because those are the first two fights, and the third fight, Andrade Mackenzie Dern, is really fun as well. I really love that, and I think because we've seen how susceptible Andrade has actually been to, competent grapplers. I think that's Dern's fight to really lose, if you ask me. But one problem I've always had with Dern is her stand up has never really,
It's got better.
it has got better, but not, I think, in the realms, I think we'd all expect it to. But I think is she still training under Perillo? I think she's still training with Jason Perillo, I believe. Forgive me, the
Cheers,
gym's name off the top of my head, but
Ruka.
you know, so obviously the improvements are going to come because Perillo is one of the best striking coaches in the game. We'll have to see. I obviously we know how good her grappling is. Andrade again has that just knockout power that most girls in that division don't have. It's a fun fight, honestly. It's a hard one to predict, to be honest,
I don't
because
know.
I feel like I could see Andrade maybe if Dern leaves an opening and tries to go pure jiu-jitsu, I feel like you could see Andrade just start slamming some hammer fists down or something like that. Maybe, and then just landing. I don't know. I'm still picking Dern, but I don't know.
I
It's a
think
tough
she's
one.
closed the gap enough with her striking to compete with anybody now. I really do. I think she doesn't have to be the best striker in the world. She just has to be able to have an offense as a smokescreen for her grappling, and to also sometimes be able to competently stand and bang essentially. And her
Yeah.
last fight was who? Angela Hill?
Well, against Dern. Yeah, it was Angela Hill, main event.
Beat her
Yeah,
up for
that's it.
5 rounds on the feet.
Yeah.
And Angela Hill is a 5 round Muay Thai practitioner. That's what she is. So the fact that she went out there, beat up and bust up Angela Hill to a level that we've not really seen before. Mackenzie Dern hits hard, and we obviously know her jiu-jitsu. And I just think she's got enough striking now to get in on her body locks, get in on her takedowns, get to her single legs, and make her life a lot easier. And I think that she probably submits Andrade via an armbar
Yeah,
in the
that's
first or
where
second round.
Yeah, I'm seeing a submission for Dern. That's where I lean to. But it's a tough fight for both women,
For
if you
sure.
ask me. I think just stylistically, there's risks on both ends, but I think we just have to jump into
Yeah, let's do
realistically
it.
the co-main event because we said we
Let's,
talk about it and we're always going to because anyone who's been listening to this podcast for a long time will know how high we are on Tom Aspinall. I've had him penned in as the future greatest heavyweight ever. I know that's a big claim, but I stand by it, and I've never really shifted from that viewpoint because he just gets better and better. And the fact you can blow your MCL like that, recover in under a year, and then come in and look better than you did before, is for me that's that championship mentality that most people don't have. And for me, the narrative I'm seeing is that Sergey has him on the feet, and Tom's gonna have to
yeah.
take him to the
I
mat.
wanted
And I
to ask
don't
you that.
understand it. I don't understand it. I really don't get it because I've been watching some Sergey fights recently, like just going back and having a look at him. He's got power, but his striking's quite sloppy.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go for it. Shoot.
Let me reverse how we go about this. How does Sergey Pavlovich beat him? What's his path to victory?
He's just got to knock him out. I don't think he has the. I think his wrestling's good, but I don't think he has the submission threat to submit Tom at all. Not even no chance. He would for some other people, but Tom's jiu-jitsu is elite level. It's probably the best in that division. But maybe Jalton Almeida you can contest, but I don't see
And
him getting a
maybe his
submission.
wrestling is as well.
Yeah, maybe, but
Who's
I
a
think you
better
have to look
wrestler?
at Almeida or Pavlovich
No, I'm talking about
or
then Tom Aspinall,
Tom.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Tom's just grappling as a whole game is
That's what I'm
better
saying.
by a mile. I think. Yeah, I realistically, for me, the only way I see him catching Tom is with that right hand, and the one risk I see is to when Tom leaves his chin open. But it kind of Tom does that in a sense, not out of a weakness. It's part of his game. It allows him to weave in and out. He's very elusive at 260 pounds, which is what makes him so good. He's so good on the outside. Guys can't touch him. Tybura had could barely, had a couple of glancing shots, but nothing crazy. And most of his other opponents have barely touched him either. And I think you just look at those fights, you look at how Tom moves, and he's developed his footwork by If you watch the Tybura fight and then go back and watch his previous ones, he has evolved so
He has
much.
two
It's
legs.
it's pretty incredible. Yeah, that is also true.
It was the
But
first
he
time
moves
he
like
fought.
Apollo Creed in
First
there.
time he fought. It's the first time he fought with two legs.
Yeah, two functioning
Pretty
legs.
much
Yeah,
ever.
I mean, yeah, I mean, he looks like Apollo Creed in there, and he's weighing 260 pounds. He looks like Muhammad Ali. He's dancing around. That's, it's quite absurd to watch, and I just don't think Pavlovich is even going to catch him. And if anything, I can see it the other way around. The way I keep seeing it is a counter. I can see just a counter right that Tom's so good at those flurries he comes in with. That is something to be concerned about though at the same time, because I feel like Tom, whenever he lands flush, he goes for it. He smells blood and he goes for it. He did it against Tybura. He did it against Arlovsky in the first round, and couldn't put him away. But Arlovsky's got that veteran experience. But I do worry that maybe Pavlovich could see an opening there in between that when Tom lands a good shot, maybe like a nice left or straight down the middle. I could see Sergey maybe looking for that counter sort of bomb down the middle as well. But for me, I just don't see a world where Sergey wins it. I really don't. Obviously, you run that risk because it's heavyweight. Of course, and Pavlovich hits like a freight train. But I feel like I just don't see. I don't see the narrative. I don't see this fight as close as everyone says it is. I said the same thing about the Leon Edwards Usman fight. I mean that was even more so. But they're about evens for this fight, and I don't understand it. I feel like Tom is better pretty much everywhere, technically, and even his power is disrespected. I feel like his power on the feet is pretty fucking good as well. So I mean, you know how I feel. I want to know your prediction on it, and I'll let you just chime in. Give me your thoughts on how you see it happening.
I think maybe the first round's quiet. I think maybe the first round looks quite respectful. Maybe Sergey will look to see what Tom gives him, and I think Tom's gonna move quite a bit in the first round laterally and see what he's given. I think that Sergey's best bet is as the fight goes on, or maybe I don't think he does this in the first round, but he done it against Curtis Blades, so no idea why he wouldn't do it against Tom Aspinall, to be perfectly honest. Is he may go in and just run for the hills, swing for the fences, run for the hills, and try and get a big knockout. He may try and do that. I don't think that's going to be within his best
I
interests.
don't think it will either, but I still think Tom will get him in the first, though.
I just think if he is to do that, the counters on the feet are just going to be a bit too slick. Yeah, you could probably say that Sergey has slightly more power. To be honest, I don't think either one has more than the other. I think, to be perfectly honest,
Sergey, he hasn't really. He's never really put anyone out with one punch.
I thought this when I watched his highlights, right? And I know this.
Am I seeing what? I don't understand what everyone's seeing.
No,
I'm glad you're with me on this because I don't.
He's very good. He's very good. He's very intimidating. He's very powerful. He's all of those things, and the stats back it up. Go back and watch every knockout of his career. I did because I pretty much watched the whole countdown, and they include most of them.
Yeah, it's a good countdown.
There is not one really fight in which he just puts someone out with one punch. There isn't. It is almost always someone getting caught in a bad position, which I guess is what any knockout is, getting caught in a bad position, getting clipped by a heavy shot, and then a flurry of shots coming after that and finishing him. I don't think he has the power to just switch. Well, he obviously does, but we haven't seen him just switch someone off with one punch. We haven't seen that. So although his power is a worry, I don't think it will be as concerning as a Francis Ngannou, for example, who does put people out with one shot. I don't know if Pavlovich has that. I just think Tom's going to use a lot of long-range weapons in the first round.
That's going to be the key.
And then I think
100%.
in the second, I think Pavlovich is going to load up on something. He's going to give him an opportunity. I think there's just a different... The way I see this, to put it very concisely, to round it up, I just see them as different operating systems when it comes to striking. When it comes to MMA, I just think there's an operating speed that Tom is on of a new system, which is just a little bit quicker. It's a little bit more fine-tuned. It's a little bit... Not a little bit. I think is a lot more operationally smarter inside the cage. And I just think everything that Sergey does at heavyweight, I think Tom's going to be able to just see a second before everyone else, because not only is his IQ so good, but the speed where someone like a Pavlovich is operating at is just completely different to the speed that someone like Tom is competing at. So I see a second round finish is what I see.
I see it in the first. What, knockout or like TKO? I don't see a submission, to be honest. Every time I visualize the fight, I see it as a TKO or a KO. I see a
submission.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised either way.
The reason I say
The way,
that,
yeah,
the
yeah.
only
Go.
reason
Sorry.
I say that is because I believe that Tom, well, of course, knows that this is one of the biggest opportunities for his life, and he'll be looking at this fight, and the same that he will say to himself with every fight is, I believe I can beat this person everywhere. Where's my easiest path to victory? Well, if I get him on his back, we've seen him finished, we've seen that deficit, and I'm not going to be able to take any punches there, and there's less risk. So I just think as soon as that takedown presents itself, I think he sits him down to the mat, whether in the first or the second. And if he gets up from there once, I don't think he will again. So on that second one, I believe that will be all she
Yeah, I
wrote.
can see that.
Head and
I
arm,
think. Oh, I
sort
see.
of.
I see a rear naked choke. To be honest, that's all right. She's very good on a half guard. To be fair, he's very good in half guard.
Even
So maybe
something like
something
a
from there.
straight arm lock, a Kimura, just a big
Yeah,
boy
yeah.
snapping exercise, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, what summarizes it to me is there's a lot of guys in that division who can do what Sergey Pavlovich does. There's no one who can do what Tom does. If we're talking about on the feet, that's the way I see it. A lot of guys, they're heavyweight sluggers. Obviously, Pavlovich is a bit more composed and a bit more powerful than a lot of those guys. Otherwise, he wouldn't be where he is now. But there's a lot of guys who fight in that similar way. No one fights like Tom in that division at all. And I haven't seen anyone, anyone in the history of heavyweight, all the heavyweight fights, name someone who fights like the way Tom does at 260 pounds. You can't. Like, you really, really can't. So for me, I'm so I've said a piece on him. We've said how good he is. We know how this is going to go. I hope we don't start him next week.
Possibly.
With egg on our face, but it's
Possibly.
heavyweight, so that's the allure of it. You never know how it's going to go down at the end of the day because knockouts and knockout, and it takes one, especially at 260 pounds. But let's go into the main event. We'll brush through that, and then we can just jump into some whatever's been going on in the creative side of things for us both. This week. But Jiri Prochazka, Alex Pereira is probably the fight I still can't predict. I mean, you can never predict a Jiri fight, but I still cannot pick who I've got in that fight. I really can't. But the odds have shrunk down. Actually, Alex Pereira was a significant favorite, but they've shrunk down. They're about
Why?
evens now. I don't know. I think if you ask me, when we looked at Alex
This is
Pereira's last
close.
fight,
Everyone has really
it's a close
favoured
fight for
Alex,
sure.
I think.
But if you look at Alex's last fight, for me, the only reason he won that fight was because it was in Salt Lake City. That's the way I see it. I think if it wasn't at high altitude, I think Jan would have wrestled him about, because clearly the altitude affected him massively, and he wasn't able to implement the rest of his grappling past the first round. And I still think that's a hole that Alex isn't going to be able to fill. Jiri, that is his path to win. I think.
Hold up.
On the feet, it's not there.
Oh, what you're saying the hole is in regards to the wrestling?
Yeah,
I don't know.
sure. I don't think it's
I don't know about
too.
that.
I mean, at light heavyweight, he doesn't have as much of a size advantage anymore. Obviously,
If
that's just how it
any,
is.
I think, if any
It's
size
pretty.
advantage.
Yeah, exactly. So he's going to be able. People are going to be able to ragdoll him. People with the grappling ability are going to be able to do things they are to him. Jiri isn't. Jiri's just a wild man. He's kind of. He's not even a jack of all trades. He's just. he's a. I don't know what you call him. He just does everything strangely, and I mean, this is why I would never predict. I never put money on a Prochazka fight because you never know how it's going to go. But if you keep that on the feet, I think it's Alex's fight to lose though, because
Really?
the one thing about Jiri is, Jiri leaves his chin wide open, and I think that's if anyone's going to catch
So
him,
does
it'll be Alex
Alex.
for sure. Yeah, also true.
This is
I
what
don't
this
know. This
is
is what I
why
mean. I have no
I
idea.
watched this.
I've been thinking about this for weeks. People asking me on my stream who I've got. I still don't know.
I think is a really tough one to predict, to be perfectly honest. I do have a little sense in the water just from one sentence that I saw Yuri say from the other day. I have a feeling that he's going to try and wrestle him. I really do. I have a
That's
feeling
what I think as
that he's
well.
going to try and wrestle him. I don't think that he's going to be. I don't know. The thing is with Alex, he learns so quick. He gets better very fast, and you can never count him out of situations like this. I don't know if he'll be at a necessarily a grappling deficit in this fight. I'm not sure he will be. I think he'll be able to get to his feet. I think we'll be able to see him. We've seen him survive tough positions. We've seen him with Jan Blachowicz on his back, both boots in, fighting for a rear naked choke for essentially a whole round. That's a legit black belt on your back in Jan Blachowicz. So I'm not sure that Alex hasn't patched that gap enough to where he can compete with someone like Yuri on the floor. 100%. Of course, when it gets into a dogfight later rounds, it's a whole different question. I just think, I know the narrative going into it is Alex is this terrifying striker, And obviously, Yuri leaves his head a bit up and a bit open. We know that. So the easy narrative going into it is Alex just nukes him. I don't think Alex's power transfers
That was my initial
to
thoughts, and then it's
205
shifted now. Yeah,
the
I agree.
same as it obviously does at 185.
Blachowicz took his best shots.
He's still powerful. He's still powerful.
Yeah, true.
He's still a monster. He's still a beast. He can still put anyone out, given the right setup, given the right shot, 100%. But he's not nuking people as if he was at 185. He just isn't. It's a different ball game. And Yuri's got one hell of a chin. I don't know. I feel like the dynamic striking of Yuri from the outside is going to be tricky for Alex. I really do. I think it's going to be difficult when they're outside. I think when the distance is a lot closer, I'll probably favour Alex there in the pocket, going to the body, then going upstairs. I can see
those
things like that.
Yeah, well.
Calf kicks from
That's
that distance. Yeah. The thing is with Yuri, he's constantly switching though. He's constantly switching.
He's bouncing as well. Won't be able to do that with the calf kicks.
It'll be hard to land them, right? So I think the longer that this stays an outside fight, I do favour Yuri from that sort of range. I really do. I think if it gets...
I don't know. I
don't know. I really don't.
Also, you have to also concede that Yuri's had so little fights in the UFC. 3, I think he's had. Right? He fought Ozdemir, then he fought Reyes, then he fought...
It's the same as Alex.
Teixeira.
He's only had...
Yeah,
he's only
exactly.
Had a few.
Yeah, good point.
6 fights.
That's what I mean. It's so hard to really... I still can't predict it. Honestly, I'll just...
We'll wrap it on this.
Screw it. I'll say Jury. I don't know. I'll pick Jury. Why not?
I'm leaning Prohashka.
Jury by decision.
But I'm not leaning against Alex Pereira to make history again, become another double champion, and become...
That'd be incredible, wouldn't it?
Arguably one of the best combat sport athletes of all time. A Glory double champion and a UFC double champion.
Also now in the Hall of Fame as well.
Yeah,
Glory Hall of Fame.
That's completed combat sports essentially. You can look at...
Pretty much.
Yeah, you can look at...
WWE now.
That's kind of crazy, right? So... Yeah, we'll wrap on that. I'm gonna say Yuri gets that one, maybe from a decision. So I'm gonna say that.
Yeah, I agree. So you want to delve into anything in your YouTube stuff?
Yeah,
at all?
we can do. Talk to me. How's it been going for you?
I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, delving into just getting back into the weekly flow of doing once a week videos. Putting more time and effort to them. Well, I realize they do take longer than I keep thinking they will, and I underestimate how long my Friday. I usually post on the Friday, but I finish it on the Friday as well. And I always underestimate how much I actually have to do left. And it just takes longer and longer and longer. There's always something more to do. And that's something I need to get to grips with. Also, something I'm struggling with is just idea generation. My videos aren't been doing that well, and I realize I'm not spending enough time on idea generation. I started writing a script last night, and I'm tempted to just can it because I'm not sure. So, how would you feel if I did a video on Ian Gary and the whole situation around that? Do you think that does well? Just as a premise? Is that I'll take that as a yes.
Well, it's how does it do well in relation to... I in truth, I don't think there's an idea. I know that this is not very helpful.
No, I know what you're saying.
I don't think there's an idea that you would come up with now that would be a bad idea. I think there's some which have more scope than others, but I don't think there's any bad ideas. It's just how well do you tell that story and how well would you get me invested into what's happening. So whether that's the Ian Gary, whether that's the UFC lawsuit, whether that's the Yuri Alex, whatever that is, I think there's a narrative and a story with all of them. I think with people, you're asking me the question, would people care about it? I understand what you're saying. Is there a big enough draw to it? I think there is. I think if you package it correctly, if you build the intrigue of Ian Gary, what he's doing, how he's doing it, I think 100% there's a story. And I think he's quite an entertaining character. So,
because I did a video on Ian Gary back in a few months ago, and it did awful. It's one of my worst performing videos. I think, in fact, I don't think it hasn't even broken 1,000 views. But it was. I didn't script it. It was one of those sort of unscripted ones. It was a shorter one. It wasn't, my best work, but this has been an in-depth one. Also, with the whole news about Leon Edwards, coming through and all of that, that's something I really want to delve into. And also just the general.
How do you come up with your ideas?
Depends. So sometimes it just come out of the blue. I got a couple of good ideas from my stream actually, which was cool. But a lot of it's down to research, looking at what other people are doing, and trying to blend that into my own sort of thing, and also. Just present news. I'm kind of trying to find the right line between talking about present topics right now that are really trending, because obviously the combat sports is evolving so much. There's always something new happening, right? So you got to jump on it quick. And obviously, my videos take I do it over a week, so you kind of have to time it right. So that's why I don't tend to focus on present stuff too much. I mean, I am for this week, obviously, like if I do progress the Ian Gary thing, but I tend to do something that anyone can just tune in anytime and they see it like, oh, cool.
I think
I
that's a
don't know. Yeah,
good way to
I
go,
do.
because it's hard if you're
It is
going
hard.
trending MMA videos. It goes down the route of just
Talking to the camera
talking to the
and
camera,
yeah,
chael style, and just pumping them out very regularly, which I believe is what you said on multiple times. You're not necessarily not looking to do that, but you're not looking to do that now, at least. So yeah, it seems like you've got everything going in the right direction in regards to look what other people do. It's also reverse engineer. What would I want to
of
see?
course.
You speak to your community a
That's a
lot,
good point, actually.
so speak to
Yeah.
continue to speak to your community. What would you like to see? Is there any differences? What channels do you like? Why do you like them? I think it just comes down to market research. And because you're in live streams quite often, I know you didn't do one this week, but when you get back into them, I think just asking
I'll be
those
back on it tonight,
people
actually.
what they want to see, why they want to see it, why they like certain things, and just reverse engineering it, I think you'll get to the answer a lot quicker.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what about you? What's obviously I know you've been busy obviously with the Polaris stuff. That was obviously taking up the forefront of your mind, I imagine, and
It's just
trying to balance that with all your platform
it's
stuff.
the balance of traveling, and it's the balance of doing different work tasks like that, going down to Southampton, shooting, filming, editing, getting that out. It's the tasks with doing that whilst running the channels on the other side. But for me, more so, is I've looked back at the last couple of weeks. I need to get way more. I know that this isn't necessarily your style, and I need to get way more organized, way more time slots, way more knowing when things need to get done and on what
Yeah.
day, and churn out. So I can, because there's elements with things like this where you can't do that, and it is just sort of on the go, it is free flowing. But there's a lot of things, practices, behind the scenes things, less interesting things, whether it's the accounts, whether it's certain things like this, whether it's reach outs, small things, operational things that I can be doing on a consistent basis. And I think when you start something like this and everything's free moving and just an idea, you're not really sure how to structure a day or what you should be doing when, because you have no idea what you're doing. But now I feel like I'm at a place where there is a lot more infrastructure and it's a lot more predictable of things that I'm doing and places I'm working and whatnot, that I can sit there and say, right, okay, here's a bit more of an outline for the week, because I need to do that. I need to be more.
I wish I could.
I think everyone can say, oh, I wish I want to be more productive, right? I think everyone could say that. But I guess it's, okay, well, how do I actually be more productive? How can I reduce friction with certain tasks? How can I improve the efficiency of certain tasks? And it's just setting up good habits, whether that's writing a to-do list the day before or on the weekend. It's just a ton of things. So I think that's the thing that I'm mainly working on, that I mainly want to work on this week, is having a more of a structured, rigid plan for things and just getting on top of everything more. I can see now I'm at a place where I sort of look back and I reflect on some of the things that I'm doing and some of the opportunities I've got and different income streams now that I've got for the business and stuff like that. And I think this is a level of where I wanted to be a couple of years ago. This is a point where I wanted to get to, and now I'm sort of at this starting point, if you like, after a 3-year grind or possibly even longer than that. Now I need to start going to town with this. Now I need to actually start developing on this particular level and taking it to the next stage. And
yeah, I don't think I'm there yet.
I've got everything there to do it, really. I've got the opportunities. I've got the income now to do it. I've got the people that can help me with certain things to do it. So it's all there. So now it's actually sitting down, reevaluating a little bit and thinking, right, okay, what's the priority going on forward here? Because the priority for me, in the short term at least, is to double down on what's making the largest portion of my income. So double down on that and how I can improve that, which I am slowly doing each day, which still is TikTok at this point. And then it's have a look at the other 30% of revenue, consultancies, working with people, things like that. How can I make that better, more efficient, and how can I grow both of those things? And I think definitely in the next couple of months at least, like that's going to be my priority moving forward. How can I take my majority revenue streams and optimize them? How can I make them better? And how can I improve them? How can I improve the processes for them? Everything from start to finish. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I
where I'm
sort
at.
of, whether intentionally or not, kind of done that because transitioning to one video a week means because the videos are longer, and obviously it's not just down to that because it's down to your revenue is down to how long your average view duration is, so how long people are watching the videos and staying on the platform for. So it's down to your own video making ability as well to keep the viewers engaged. But for me, my obviously not in terms of the view counts, my views have been incredible, but the revenue per 1,000 views, the RPM is better now because the videos are longer,
Mm.
and I know it kind of translates the same because I'm instead of 2 videos a video, I'm doing 1 video a week, but now I'm getting about £4.60, £5 per 1,000 views now,
Wow,
which is
that's a
pretty,
lot.
yeah, it's not bad. So
That's a lot.
when I yeah no, so when I get a video that's I mean my recent videos is about to crack 3K in a couple of days, so it's not doing too well, and obviously the risk is there, the higher risk because you're spending more time on one product, and if it doesn't do well, then that's a whole week of going back to the drawing board and getting into another one. But so that's on me to find a way to branch out into different revenue streams, as you've done, I think, very well. So that's something I maybe need to explore. And obviously, I've got the memberships as well, which has helped. I've had some people donations in streams, which obviously I'm increasingly, massively grateful for. So, but there obviously, I read a lot of guys, obviously like Paddy Galloway, and you've spoken about him, and other people on Twitter that I follow. They're very good at, and I think there's more to monetization in being a YouTuber than just ad revenue and
For sure.
sponsorships. There's so many avenues to take. So that's something I might look at exploring
I did,
in the next
I
couple of
did
months.
think as well, in truth, when I was thinking all of this, I also thought at how important I believe that this channel is. I didn't realize quite the extent of it, but I was thinking this week how important this channel will be for accelerating those opportunities and in
Massively,
improving out those opportunities for different revenue streams, if that makes sense, within the industry. Because
for sure.
the more that this channel grows and the more recognition that this gets, it's not necessarily from a point of view of, oh, it's going to make tons off of AdSense or it's going to make, no, likely
It's
not
not about that.
for a very long time. And it's not really about that. But what it does do is further establishes us, our brands, and legitimizes our work within the industry, if that makes sense. So that's why I was even messaged you about the short form channels this week for this account, because
Yeah, we need to do that.
yeah, let's make that a priority of this week. Both of us will make that a priority, and off of the call we'll do whatever we need to do to set that up, because I think I just sort of thought about it, and you've done a really good job actually inviting people on and having people come on the chat and finding good guests, actually really good guests I wouldn't have necessarily thought of. But if we continue to do that with a purpose, we continue to have those conversations, but we move it onto the short form. That's the whole game changer. It's moving it onto the short form.
Yeah, it's such an open goal
That's
that we
all.
need to explore. How were the clips on? How were the automated AI clips? Any on the Riverside? Were they any good?
They're really good. The only problem is the formatting when there was 3 people was just horrible.
Oh, it doesn't work.
So, and
Yeah.
as well, what I know that you're not going to like this, but if you think about it, all of the clips that will get produced off of the back end are going to be yours with a green screen, not with the automated
Oh
background.
my. Well, I can. I mean, that's something I could change. It's not
But it's
the
not,
end of the world.
because it takes the recording from the live one and generates them off that. You can't enter a video, if that makes sense.
Which you can't download it.
You
So
can't.
not download the clip and then just put it through post and then change the green screen.
Oh, you can do that. It
Yeah.
may just be
Yeah,
long,
exactly.
right? If there's a
Not really.
really.
You just have to re-render. It's not the end of the world. It's only a short. It's not going to take long. Well, they're 25, 30 seconds long, maybe a bit more. Yeah, that's nothing.
Fair
That
enough.
ain't nothing.
Fair enough. But
Um,
yeah, I think that's where, like you said, that's an open goal, because the more I think about it, we have a completely the more I verbalize it, that really think about this, right? We have a completely unlimited source of content creators, unlimited. I have we collectively have so many we could reach out to, speak to, know personally, right? So there's so much.
And we both have our strings to pull in different sides of the game, so we're maximizing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's so many people that we can get on there and really speak to and get an understanding of, and we can really continue to further create our brand of being that go-to for that. Yeah, it's very niche.
Exactly.
It is very niche. MMA content
Well, the thing is,
creation.
it won't just be that though. That's the thing. It will be. You know, as I said, we'll get fighters on as well, as we have done. You know, so that's
Of
fighters and
course.
people in that space. There's so much opportunity.
Of course,
So, yeah,
we're
it's
always
like,
going to lean into, I think, sort of the creator element a little bit more. But I think of course, we'll have fighters on and whatnot. We'll speak to them.
fighters that are creating.
But that's what I think.
Yeah.
I think getting fighters on. I think why I would ask. Why would we?
Yeah, no, of course. I wouldn't just get them for the sake of it. Yeah, it'd be someone I'm actually like. There's a reason I reached out to Jack Shaw because of what he's doing outside of the cage, and that's what's really the appeal, I think, for us anyway. Like I'd love to get Aljamain Sterling on personally. Like he'd be up there, as my top guest to get on down the line. So
Yeah,
I think
we
it'd be
can.
a great conversation as well.
We
We can
could
see
definitely get Aljo on at some point. But I think 100% getting the people that cross over well into those different aspects are definitely the priority, because like I said, I know it's even a small niche, but as the sport grows and as you said, you look now, there's more and more everyday content creators that this platform is just going to become increasing. I made a video the other day and I just put it up there. It was just a random one about it was a clip taken from the podcast actually, about making sure to set up a business and whatnot. Before I got the video didn't get a lot of views, but I got quite a lot of messages off the back of it saying, "Oh, how do you do this? What's this? What's this?" So now I'm just going to start redirecting people to the podcast. Oh, I've got a channel that talks about this and whatnot, because I get a lot of
listen to this hour-long episode.
No, because
we discuss everything.
I drop messages to them, and I always respond to people. But it would be easier if I could just say, "Oh, we've got a platform where we talk about all these things. Oh, here's a million shorts of us talking about exactly what you're saying, how we got into it, how we improved it, how we with our processes." So I think for us moving forward, and we'll wrap on this, that should be a priority for sure.
Agreed. Yeah, is this episode 22, 23? I don't know. MMA Creators Podcast, one of those two numbers. This is actually going out on a Monday because we messed up our schedules. That's on us. But that'll be out later today. You'll see. Well, I mean, you'll be listening to it now, so it doesn't matter now. MMA Creators Podcast. We'll see you next week. Cheers.